All right, let's get started. We are going to make the 1.5 inch by 2.5 inch piece that uses the 1.5 by 2 inch blue piece, and I have sewn on my background white squares. Now this is for block number 7, if you remember. So we need to trim this down to 1.5 by 2.5. Now a little trick that I have for you is to take a Sharpie and mark out your 2.5 by 1.5. Now you can draw a line all the way across if you want. I just like making little marks. Now when we're done with these marks, you can just take a hand sanitizer and a clean cloth and it wipes right off. I'll show you that here when I'm done. So I marked the 1 1/4 and I'm going to line that up right here, right down the middle, okay? Now, on your pattern, it tells you that you're going to have about 1/2 inch from this point to this point. So about 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here, all right? So we're gonna look at the 1 1/4 going all the way down the middle. I have about 1/2 inch here and about 1/2 inch here. And we're gonna line it up right like that. And we're just gonna cut up and over, and then I'll flip it around. Now it really doesn't matter where it's lying on the board because I'm using the markings on my ruler and not necessarily the markings on my board, all right? So it can lay wherever, but it helps if it's straight, right? So we are now gonna line this up with 2.5 by 1.5 across. And we're going to make sure that that 1 1/4 is right down the middle and hits that intersection right there. And you can see it's a little bit off over here. I'm going to have to go back and trim that. And sometimes when we're working on fabric that's on the bias or on the diagonal, it has extra stretch, right? So we have to be mindful of that and be just a little extra careful because it will stretch on you. I'm going to flip it back around and make sure that my cuts are right. And it looks like I had a tiny bit here that I needed to trim again. Okay, so now I have one more to trim. I'll do that later, but we have all of these pieces ready to go. This next piece we're gonna do is the 2.5 by 6.5 inch piece, which goes in between the pieces that we're making. So this piece will finish off that top peak, okay? So this is going to be 2.5 by 6.5, and let's go ahead and mark our ruler. I've cleaned it off. We're going to mark it again. 1/2 of 6.5 is 3 1/4, so we'll make a little mark at 6 1/4, 6.5, and then we'll go 2.5. Come over here and just make a little mark just to remind ourselves where we're cutting, all right? So let's make sure that we have the exact middle. So we're going to fold this, lining up our seam, and I'm just going to finger press. It's just so I can find that middle a little quicker. This is about 1 inch, so we've got about 1/2 inch on each side. All right? So we are going to line up our 3 1/4 with that press line. And on your notes, it says we have, well, the pattern, about 1 1/4 inch of white space here and 1 1/4 inch of white space here. And if it's a tiny bit off, just adjust, because remember we're working on the bias here. And it's straight down here. So we're gonna cut up the side and across. And then we're gonna flip it around. And we're going to put that 3 1/4 right here, so that press line lines up right on that inch line. 3 1/4 is right in the middle. We've got 2.5 by 6.5. We've got about 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch. Looks like we might be a tiny bit off, so we'll just adjust it and we'll split the difference, right? Cut up and over. There we go. So we've got 2 pieces now on block number 7. See how that's going to work? All right, so your last piece, you're going to do the same. You're going to mark the middle, and you're going to mark 1.5 by 6.5 on your ruler. And you're going to find the middle, cut it just like we did the other 2 pieces. And that's going to be what you need to cut those tricky little pieces. Now see how much this is stretching? You might have to use some pins to make it fit just right. But I promise you, you take the time, it's going to work out and it's going to be beautiful. So if you have questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer those, and good luck.